Hey everyone, welcome to Coding Vibes. This is very first video of our LLD series we are starting, and we will start this LLD series with very important concept called solid principle. And आज की इस वीडियो में हम मोस्टली फोकस करेंगे सिंगल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी प्रिंसिपल पे। एक बार समझते हैं सिंगल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी प्रिंसिपल क्या होता है। तो एक बेसिक डिफिनीशन है, अ क्लास शुड हैव ओनली वन रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी और अ सिंगल जॉब विद इन अ सॉफ्टवेयर सिस्टम। सो इफ देयर इज अ सॉफ्टवेयर, अगर कोई एक क्लास है तो उसकी एक ही रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए। इट शुड नॉट डू मल्टीपल जॉब्स, राइट? तो दैट्स द बेसिक डेफिनेशन ऑफ सिंगल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी प्रिंसिपल। एक एग्जांपल लेके इसे समझते हैं कि ये लाइक हाउ डज इट लुक इन रियल वर्ल्ड, राइट? तो एक एग्जांपल लेते हैं, लेट्स से एक ऑनलाइन पेमेंट सिस्टम का एग्जांपल लेते हैं। सो लेट्स से देयर इज अ सर्विस, ऑनलाइन payment service, and let's just say that it has three features. It can process a payment, and then it can trigger notification, and then may generate invoice. So generate invoice is another feature. Now given these are the three features, right, let's try to come up with a class, right, that will include these features. So ये जो क्लास हम बनाएंगे बहुत ही बेसिक क्लास होगी जिसमें we will try to incorporate these features. So let's say there is a class payment service. What all features do we have? So one is it will process a payment. So let's say there is a method, void method, process payment, and to process a payment you may need a payment object. The sole responsibility of this method would be to probably do some validation and then process the payment, right? And then another method would be to trigger notification. So let's say void trigger notification, and to trigger a notification you may need user detail. So a user, and then a message maybe. For now let's say a message for simplicity, right? The responsibility of this method is it can trigger a notification to this user, right? Now third thing that we wanted to implement is, let's say, generate invoice. Let's say invoice, it returns an invoice, right? So generate invoice, and then it can take a order or maybe order detail, right? And then on top of it will generate an invoice. This invoice could be anything, it can consist of a PDF or anything, right? So if we see, we had a requirement of online payment system or payment service, and it has three main features. It can process a payment, it can trigger a notification, and then it can generate an invoice. Now let's try to see ये जो class हमने बनाई है, let's try to analyze this class with respect to what we saw, the definition of single responsibility principle, which says that a class should have only one responsibility. So let's just see this payment service. If you see, right, it can process a payment, which is very good, right? If it is a payment service, it should ideally process a payment, right? But should a payment service trigger a notification? Maybe not, right? So notification is a separate thing, right? It can reside into some other place, right? Now similarly, should a payment service generate invoice? Again, maybe not, right? There can be another class that can generate the invoice, right? So if we see, this particular class that we have created is violating the SRP principle, right? Now let's try to see how would we fix this. So Let's say this trigger notification, we move it to another class, right? So let's say we have another class, notification service, and then it has a method void trigger notification. It will take user as a parameter, and then let's say a simple message for now, and then it will do rest of the things. So what we did, we removed this piece of code from this payment service and we moved it into a separate class, right? Similarly, let's remove this invoice generation part as well from the payment service. So let's say we create another class, invoice generator, and then it has a simple method. Let's say generate invoice. It takes order detail and then it does the processing and generates the invoice. So now if we see, notification service has a sole responsibility of sending a notification, and then this invoice generator class has a sole responsibility of generating an invoice. So they are following solid SRP. This is also following SRP. Given we have removed these two from here, now our payment service is also following SRP. But this payment service should consist of these three features, right? So how would we do that? Now ideally this is not a payment service, this particular thing. This can also be moved to a separate class, let's say payment processor, and its sole responsibility would be process payment. It takes payment details and then it does the rest of the thing, right? So now we have three classes: a notification service, a invoice generator service, a payment processor. Now this payment service can have instances of these three classes, right? So it can have instance of payment processor, right? Say payment processor, and then it can have notification service, and then it can have invoice generator. And now we can always have some sort of a mechanism to initialize these variables, these services, and then do the processing, do the rest of the job, right? So if we see, now we have actually segregated the logic, or we have actually made sure that a class has a single responsibility, a sole responsibility. So payment processor has a sole responsibility of processing a payment, right? I hope this is making sense, right?
So this is all about single responsibility principle. In next video we will try to code this same example that we took, and we will also look at the advantages of the single responsibility principle.